Hello guys, so this week I'm going to be taking a look at the Daniel Smith Extra Fine introductory set of watercolors. These watercolors were actually a Christmas gift from my dad. They were actually in my Christmas haul video, and if you would like to see any of the other goodies that I got for Christmas, then I will link that haul up in the iCard and down below in the description if you would like to go see that. This clip is just showing you guys what I did with my Daniel Smith watercolors. I poured them into half pans and stuck them into this container using double-sided tape. The container is just from a really cheap watercolor set that I did not use very often, so now it's being put to good use. In this palette, underneath the Daniel Smith half pans, we have the Roman Schmoll full pans. I did not use them for this video, but maybe another video for the future? I don't know. I'm also showing off the swatch card and also the mixing card that I did for these watercolors, which is something I've never done before. But the whole point of this introductory set is the fact that it can mix so many tones, so I thought, well, let's do a mixing card to see what we can get. Since this video is mainly going to be focused on the watercolor, the explanations for the illustrations will actually be after all of that, so if you want to hear about the illustrations, I'll recommend staying to the end of the video. I will, however, be telling you guys each of the titles of the piece as I go along, so that way when you get to the descriptions, you'll know which one I'm talking about. The name of this first piece is Wild Nights. So before I even started this piece, I actually planned out the colours digitally. This helped me immensely with how to plan out the lighting and how I wanted the picture to look. Planning out the colours actually gave me the opportunity to do the colour mix sheet because I really wanted an idea of what mixes of colours I could get. Now, they're not all the colours that I can get with this set because ratios of colour are a thing, but it just gave me sort of an idea of what I could get from the introductory set. So the colours included in this Daniel Smith introductory set are Hansa Yellow Light, New Gamboge, Quinacridone Rose, Pyrrole Scarlet, Phthalo Blue Green Shade, and French Ultramarine. So my first impression of this set was definitely how amazing the colour mixes were. This introductory set has all of the primary colours, which means you can mix all of the colours that you want to. However, what I find really interesting about it is that it has warm tones and cool tones. The warm tones being New Gamboge, Pyrrole Scarlet and French Ultramarine, and the cool tones being Hansa Yellow Light, Quinacridone Rose and Phthalo Blue Green Shade. I noticed very quickly when doing swatches that the blues had their very own distinctive characteristics. Obviously, the first contrast is that they're different tones, warm and cold, but the phthalo blue is more of a staining colour. You need a very, very small amount to go a very long way, which is amazing, but I found myself sometimes putting too much colour down. I think I definitely need to spend more time with these paints just to get a feel for the ratios that I need to use, but definitely when mixing, this proved to be difficult with the phthalo blue. The French Ultramarine, on the other hand, was very subtle in comparison. It's also a colour that granulates so heavily, so when I chose my paper to use, I actually chose cold press because I knew it would emphasise the granulation of the French Ultramarine. Because Wild Nights is supposed to be depicting an underwater scene, I really wanted that granulation to show through. Something that I also did on Wild Nights is I actually used masking fluid. These watercolours, they work well with the masking fluid. I can't really say much else. They're just like any other watercolours with masking fluid that I've tried. After I finish the watercolour portion, I actually go in with watercolour pencils and also fine liners just to bring out some details and also just to define some areas a little bit more. But since this video is mainly about the watercolour, I focus mainly on that footage rather than the line work and the extra detail that I added on top afterwards. I did actually blend the watercolour pencil with the Daniel Smith watercolours at one point, and yes, they do work very well together. It did leave a slightly different consistency and texture on the paper, but overall they worked very well together. and it's definitely a technique that I might use more in the future. So this piece is called the Goodmorrow. Now, with the other two pieces in this video, I went in with a plan. This one, I did not. I went in full force without any plan and just decided, you know what, let's actually see where the colour palette takes me. When painting the Goodmorrow, it definitely had a different feel to painting Wild Nights. Not just because it was a different illustration, but the fact that I was using the paint in a slightly different way. It actually felt quite liberating, and when I was doing this image, I actually questioned my loyalty to White Nights. Now, I love my White Nights watercolour, and I will continue using them until the end of time because they're great, they're affordable, they're a good backup alternative. But these Daniel Smith watercolours on the second piece definitely made me think twice. It was while doing this piece that I understood why a lot of people classify Daniel Smith watercolours as their favourite. This set truly shines with its mixing capabilities. The variety of shades and tones and it's just so beautiful. I just can't get over the mixing capabilities. But you can actually mix with any set of watercolours that you have. When some of you guys have approached me in direct messages and asked me about watercolours, what you should start off with, I always recommend smaller sets. And this is because it actually forces you to do the mixing of the colours that you don't have. It strengthens your knowledge of colour theory, and it also makes a better travel set. I'm not outright saying that you should go and purchase this set of watercolours because if you look it up, it's a very expensive set. It's why I got it as a Christmas gift. But what I am considering doing is taking warm and cool tones of my White Nights and actually trying out this technique as well. This I think will really help me, and also I won't feel as guilty for wasting my Daniel Smith watercolours. I'm not going to be using my Daniel Smith watercolours on my comic. I'm going to stick to my White Nights with that, just so I can keep up consistency. Also, if I run out of a colour, it's easier to replace and more affordable. But I can definitely see myself using the Daniel Smith watercolours on more professional pieces. I felt like I could get a really soft and subtle effect with these paints, something that I feel White Nights has more of an impact of colour and it's more of a punch, whereas these are more softer and just really nice to build up. Yes, some of the colours have that punch that White Nights do, looking at you, phthalo blue green shade, but I can definitely sense a subtlety to these colours. Now, fun fact, I actually brought the set of dot cards that are available on Jackson's of the Daniel Smith watercolours, and this has 238 colours on the dot cards. The only problem with having so many different colours on the dot cards is that you feel a little bit overwhelmed, like you don't know where to start in terms of where the colours are. This introductory set was a great introduction. Yeah, it's a play on the words, but that's what I can describe it as. The last image in this lineup is called The Trick. So now that I'm finished talking about the watercolour, I'm actually going to talk about the watercolour pieces themselves. Why did I do them, and also the concepts behind them, as well as visual details that I want to point out. So what are these three pieces and why did I do them? Well, the answer to that is that they are actually supposed to be for a competition. One of my art goals was actually to enter more illustration competitions, and I'm starting the year off by entering in a illustration competition. This is a book illustration competition based on love poems for the Folio Society. This is why in these pieces you can actually see an extra little bit on the side. For Wild Nights, there's like a splodge of water, so like a drop of water making up the corner. On the Goodmorrow, there is a set of curtains with rose petals, and on the Trick, there is 2 roses. These bits of all the illustrations are actually title headers. So if you haven't guessed already, the names of these pictures are actually the names of the poems. Now I am going to butcher people's names, not intentionally, but the names of the poems are Wild Nights by Emily Dickinson, The Goodmorrow by John Donne, and The Trick by Imitas Darker. I have definitely said at least 2 of those names wrong, so I will apologise for that. While I said the names, I actually have the names flashing up on screen, just so you can actually see the spelling and see my struggle. If you would like to read these poems, I will actually leave a link to them down below in the description. I'm not reading them in this video because they kind of do imply certain things, because obviously they are love poems, they do touch on that subject, and I'm not here trying to get this video demonetized. So Wild Nights. Wild Nights in the poem has a lot of water imagery. That is why I decided to go for a very nautical kind of theme. So while planning this piece, I really wanted to experiment with the way I was to paint the water, because I knew I wanted it a certain way and I wanted it to look a certain way. I was actually inspired by the work of Heikala. I am yet to get her art book. I really want her art book, but it's really expensive on Amazon right now. But I really loved the way she does water, so I really wanted that sort of look. Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to get exactly that kind of look because, hey, I'm not Heikala. But I really wanted to attempt that kind of approach with the water. Wild Nights definitely took advantage of the Daniel Smith granulating ultramarine blue, as well as the vibrancy of the phthalo green shade. What's weird about the finished piece of Wild Nights to me is that the original actually looks better than the scanned version, which never happens to me. In terms of drafting out a composition, Wild Nights was actually the easiest to draft for, followed by The Goodmorrow, and then the hardest to draft was The Trick. The Goodmorrow really does look like a simple composition, but a lot of different compositions went into thinking about this one. I had a lot of different options and a lot of different directions I wanted to go with The Goodmorrow. However, I just decided that sometimes simplicity is the best policy. Less is more. And out of the 3, I think that The Goodmorrow actually turned out to be the most atmospheric, whereas Wild Nights has great depth and The Trick has more of an intricate concept. The Goodmorrow definitely gave me more of a morning glow kind of feel, and I really wanted that to shine through in the painting, whereas The Trick definitely had less of a direction to go, so I had to come up with a concept. The Trick's imagery was a lot more vague in the words, so you had to read between the lines. The Trick actually reads more like a sonnet. The Trick gave me the impression of somebody trying to keep a dream alive once they've woken up. They're trying to carry the dream on into the next time they sleep. A lot of the draft sketches that I had for The Trick included dream catchers or doors of some kind, but then I thought about it from a different perspective and how it can affect you as a person, and it kind of made me think of the fictional flower coughing disease Hanahaki. I've probably pronounced that wrong. It's a fictional disease related to unrequited or one-sided love. To go along with the Hanahaki, I actually thought about the type of flowers that I would use in the picture. I decided to go with the orange rose as they represent desire, enthusiasm and passion. I also decided to go for the orange rose because one of the lines of the poem states, "Carrying oranges that cast a glow up into your face." This line also inspired the lighting from below the face as well. I decided to go for the concept of Hanahaki because a lot of the poem actually feels like a dream, and it also references dreams a lot, like it's not reality. So having a fictional concept definitely makes some sense, at least to me. And I have actually done something with this concept before. It was mainly for developing ideas for my 3rd year of university during the summer, but I didn't really use it. So I looked back through that development and actually saw a couple of ideas that I thought could work. Obviously, I wanted a slightly different composition, but I used that old development work as a foundation. So there were actually a couple of things that I forgot to mention in terms of this commentary. The paper that I used for these pieces were the De La Rowney cold pressed watercolour paper at 300 GSM, so very thick watercolour paper. I said that it was cold pressed paper, but I never told you what brand, so there you go. The The watercolour pencils, I used my Faber-Castell Albert Dürer pencils. I think I got these last Christmas, but I haven't really used them. I really need to use them more often, and I think going forward I will try to incorporate them into my process. And the outlines were done with my Unipin fine liners, mainly in size 0.1. I'm personally of the opinion that I probably won't win this competition. Even if I don't end up placing, I will have some pieces for my portfolio this year, which is another thing that I wanted to do these pieces for. Really speaking, this is a win-win for me either way. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can like and subscribe if you haven't already, with those post notifications on, for notifications for every time I upload or occasionally live stream. I want to thank you guys so much for watching or listening, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys!